All right. Hey again, Chuan. The the woman, right off the bat, the first thing that I look at and the first thing that I see is that her eyes are a little bit awkwardly, kind of too far apart. Um, I would ultimately take them and bring them closer together here, and something like rotating them and then bringing them a little bit further, possibly even scaling them up. Let me kind of hand key this out here. Something like, maybe just rotate a little bit here to give her that. But right now they feel like they give her almost this cross-eyed kind of look, and that's the first thing I would say right off the bat, is that you want to really kind of pay attention to that that kind of proportion. Getting them a little bit closer together, and that I think looks a little bit better. You still need to play with it a little bit more, but the eyes just give me that kind of funny cross-eyed kind of feel to it. So, fixing that is going to be a big thing. And the other thing is, as I look at, when you look at a military uniform, the problem with most military uniforms is they tend to be baggy, and so when you get a woman in a military uniform, the first thing that I would suggest is to really sit down and think about the overall shape and form. Right now you've got, and I'm just going to really roughly cut her out here. The problem is right now you've got her on a skin tight uniform, which is fine. I'm all for skin tight here, but the hips just don't look right in the uniform, and the chest doesn't feel right in the uniform. And so I'm just going to kind of really rough this out here. Give me a second. And there we go. Let's just subtract a little bit around there. Okay. So what I would do is, right now, her hips don't really feel kind of lined up, and so when I look at this, there's a couple things that I see that I think are wrong. Okay, and so the first thing is the way the torso is leaning. So you've got the breasts, but the breasts are almost turned this way, and then this is straight on. And so if you're going to do that, you really want to kind of block out the overall torso and feeling. Okay, and I think the proportions on the breast are a little bit awkward, especially since her head and neck are up here, and then you build up the rest of this area here. And even if she is kind of a muscular kind of person, the proportions just feel off. Okay, and so I would put a rib cage right around here, and then I would put her hips along here. And so by doing that, by putting those in there with a smaller torso, smaller rib cage, like so, that leaves a lot less to be kind of desired. Okay, and so I'm just going to rough this out here real quick here. And the first thing I would do is center her chest a little bit more. And then, putting your arm out like this, it almost looks perpendicular. So what I would do instead is erase this and push it back more. So I would probably push it something like this, and then back here, but you see more overlap here. So it's more like this, and then it's going back in space. Because we don't put it out to the side like that, because it just distorts everything. And so getting that pushed back in space a little bit more is going to help. And also, the three fingers is kind of weird. You're missing a finger here. It just doesn't it just doesn't look right without that third finger. So what I would tell you to do is center her breast. So after I drew this in here, I would say, let's grab this and let's copy that, transform it, flip horizontal, and so just simply adding in that like so, and we can even, you know, add that warm light to it. Let's go a little bit bigger here. And so even adding in that warm light like so, I think that tightens it up a little bit better. And then you've got different proportions here for the hips. So I'm going to flatten that, and let's grab that hip. Actually, I'm just going to do this real quick here. So grabbing this hip, and I'm going to transform and warp, and just kind of warping something like that, I think is a little bit better. And then this one you want to trim off too. So let's grab this hip here and let's warp that a little bit tighter. And let's bring in kind of that center line here, and then underneath it let's kind of clean that up. So getting that, you know, getting those legs together, I think that's what's really bothering me, is looking at this, is the legs are really kind of differently kind of put together. And so let's transform and warp this a little bit tighter together here. And then let's go back down and kind of fill in there. And so I think that is ultimately kind of where you want to really kind of force the issue, is doing it that way, is getting the proportions a little bit more symmetrical, a little bit more kind of lined up. And I think that's ultimately where you need to kind of go with this. And then, like I said, push this back here a little bit. So I would again grab this, transform it, and I'm going to warp that a little bit more. Something like that. And kind of get that curve around so you see more of the foreground. And I would bring the highlight more along the side here. Because you're actually, in all reality, you're actually seeing that aspect. So I would just kind of, and I'm just going to block this out real quick here. But yeah, I would definitely like put her elbow back. And then, you know, just you see more of the elbow from the side like that. Erase some of this over here so you don't see as much. See more of the kind of forearm of the elbow. And then because this is actually in the background here, what I would tell you to do is to bring some of that elbow in the background like this, so that it reflects the blue that you're trying to show. You know, and that is ultimately, I think the biggest issue you're having is just the anatomical proportions are a little bit off. I'm just kind of cleaning up. Cleaning up that rough edge, but I think again, you know, getting everything even up, and I think that's the biggest thing. I think that's the biggest issue you're having here, is the ultimate. Let's erase some of this here, and go back and clean some of that up. Yeah, and I think that's ultimately where you need to kind of go with it. And then having her arm just float out by the side doesn't feel natural. I would say that if you're going to do that, you want to definitely transform it and kind of give it a more natural pose. Let me go back here. Yeah, it definitely like gets more of that natural kind of feeling in there. Something like that. You know, it's just hanging more at the side, and then I would probably even tell you to transform that even like that, and then maybe even transform it something like that, so it's more naturally comfortable. You're not kind of floating it there, if that makes sense. And like I said, that's, I think, ultimately where you need to take it, because looking at here versus looking at this, she looks a little bit more natural, a little bit more relaxed. And then, you know, the back side of this is really kind of forced down, and I think that is ultimately where you want to go, is just get that kind of idea forced in there and push more of the anatomy in there, and I think that'll help you out. So I hope that helps.